Good afternoon. I hope this time everyone could see me. Welcome to my live streaming. This is the third one I've done. And since we are... Hi there. Hi, Sophie. Hi there, Mo. I hope you guys can see me okay. We are here, and because it's the 10th of February, just a few days away from Valentine's, I did think that I would create a Valentine themed cooking lesson. And because we're doing it on, we can see you and hear you. Okay, we can. Okay, great. All right, so sorry for that sort of false start. We're still trying to master our way around OBS. Anyway, it's been an afternoon of doing some prep for this because we're going to do two dishes. We're going to do a chocolate mousse, and we're going to put that into one of my chocolate forms that I've made earlier today. And we've got some cherries, some dark cherries to put inside the chocolate mousse, but also to serve on the side of the chocolate mousse. And for the main course, we're going to do a piece of fresh salmon, and we're going to serve that on crushed new potatoes, and also we've got some parsnips which we're going to blanch and then roast and then sprinkle a little bit of Parmesan cheese on it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to my ingredient camera, and we're going to go through the ingredients for the chocolate mousse, because it's the chocolate mousse we need to start and get going, because obviously that takes time to set. So for this amount of chocolate mousse that I'm making, I have halved my recipe that I have on my blog. So I've got 3 large egg yolks. We've got 175 milliliters of double cream. We've got 50 grams of caster sugar. We've got 2.5 tablespoons of espresso coffee that I've strained so there's no grains in the bottom. And over here I have 100 grams of dark chocolate that I've started to melt. So we're going to put the dark chocolate on a very low heat, and we're going to start to melt that. So I'm just going to spend a moment or two talking through the cherry, how I made the cherries, because I couldn't do everything in class, otherwise the class would be about 4 hours long. So I've got 200 grams of fresh cherries in here. I've got the juice and the peel from half a large lemon. I've got 1 level dessert spoon of corn flour, or cornstarch if you're American, that's what they call corn flour. I've got a tablespoon of cold water, and I've got a tablespoon of cherry kirsch, so that's cherry flavored liqueur. But if you don't want to put alcohol into it, you can add just another tablespoon of cold water, so that will be 2 tablespoons of cold water. So the process is you wash and cut the cherries in half and put them to one side, and then you peel the lemon, and you put just the peel. I haven't sort of zested it, I've just peeled it with a speed peeler to get the peel off. And I've put that together with 2 tablespoons of cherry jam into a small non-stick saucepan, together with half of the 1 tablespoon of cold water and the lemon juice. And we bring that up to heat, and then we take the cherry kirsch and the corn flour and make a paste. And when the mixture is coming to a simmer, then we stir that corn flour into the cherry mixture, into the jam, and that thickens it up. Once it is thick, then you turn the heat down very low, and then you put your cherries in and poach your cherries on about number 2 or number 3 until they are nice and soft but still have their shape. You can see if I take a spoon and you just get, my cable is trapped in the door. If I move these cherries around just for a second, the cherries are about 3/4 cooked. They don't need to be totally fully cooked. You don't want them to be mushy. And we're going to put some of these cherry mix into the chocolate mousse, and we're going to serve the rest of it on the side. So it offers a great sort of tart contrast to the richness of the chocolate. So the first thing, so I made this cherry mixture ahead of time because it needed to be cold when we put it into the chocolate mousse. So the first thing we're going to do is we'll go over to the stove and see if we can get to the correct stove camera. This is camera number 2 on the stove, and we're just slowly, over hot water, we are slowly melting the chocolate. And while that chocolate is slowly melting, I've got that on about number 4 because we don't want it to get too hot, but we do want it to be thoroughly mixed and melted. We're going to go back to the cutting board and we're going to whisk up our cream for the mousse. So we'll go to the chopping board, and in that measuring jug I have 175 millilitres of double cream, and what you heard me clanging around was I have a bowl, and this is a little trick we will use as chefs and restaurants and hotels. If you want to whisk up the cream and get it to thicken up really quick, then having a really cold bowl, this is probably a tiny bit too cold, but if you have a cold bowl, put the bowl in the fridge and that will help to whisk the cream up really fast. So let me just grab a silicone spatula just to take the cream out of the measuring jug, and we need to whip this until it is soft peaks for our chocolate mousse. Off for a second. I haven't quite got to where I want it in the whipping stage, but I did want to say that the Americans also call this heavy cream. We call it double cream, Americans call it heavy cream. Almost there. I'm going to just whisk the rest of it by hand because you don't want to over mix it. So that is soft peaks. So I will take my beater blades, whisks out of the machine, and I'm going to rinse these off because we'll need this when we are whisking the egg yolks. So I'll just take the silicone spatula, just make sure I've got all the cream back in there, and you can see that this is a soft peak stage, and we're just going to put that in the fridge until we need it. So we'll put that in the fridge, and we've got 3 egg yolks here. There are 3 large egg yolks, and into the egg yolks we are going to put 50 grams of caster sugar. Make sure that we get all of the caster sugar out. And once the chocolate has finished melting, then we're going to whisk this to put some air and some warmth into it to create the basis for our chocolate mousse. So we're going to go back over to the stove and have a look how the chocolate is melting. So we'll look on camera number 2. And while we're waiting for the chocolate to melt, I should have maybe put the heat up a little bit more, but it is getting melted. We'll talk about what we have on burner number 3 or number 4. Going with the salmon, because we're going to cook some salmon for the main course, we're going to use just some baby potatoes. There are 325 grams of baby potatoes I've cut into half, just so they're all roughly even sizes, and when I want to get them cooked, I'm just going to bring them up to a boil and then put some salt on them to season them and let them cook. The other vegetable we're going to serve with the salmon is some parsnips. So on burner number 1, you will see that we have a pot of water, and we're going to bring that pot of water up to a boil. And into this pot we're going to blanch our parsnips. We have 150 grams of parsnips, and we want to roast these parsnips. So I've peeled the parsnips, weighed them to make sure I've got enough 150 grams. That was the peeled weight. And then I've just cut them into small sort of wedge pieces, try to make them reasonably even in size. And we're going to blanch those for 3 minutes once the water comes up to a boil, which will then make it much easier to roast them. We'll start them off in a little bit of olive oil, and then we'll finish the roasting process in the oven. So everything is coming together. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, while we're still waiting for the chocolate to melt, a little bit about the salmon that we're going to cook. I'm going to go over to the chopping board, and I'll get my 2 pieces of salmon out that I'm cooking tonight. So here we have 2 lovely pieces of fresh salmon. I went down to the Birmingham market and I bought a whole salmon, and I brought it home in a cooler bag. When I go out to buy fresh seafood, I usually take a cooler bag with me with cooler blocks inside, and the seafood is not sitting in a warm car. Even in the winter time, I don't want the seafood sitting around in a shopping bag. I want my seafood in a cooler bag with some cooler blocks on top to keep everything nice and chilled. You can see, I hope you can see on the camera here, the iridescence of the salmon skin, which is an indication of freshness. The salmon is nice and plump. It's very iridescent in the skin. And if I turn it over, this is farm salmon, of course, but it isn't open. When salmon has been left on the ice, if you go into a fishmonger and you see the salmon and it's sort of starting to open up and turn pale, it's because it has been sitting on ice for too many days. So I know this salmon is really, really fresh, and I much prefer to go and buy the salmon whole, and then bring it home and cut it up into pieces and put it in the freezer. As an island, the UK, we should have better access to seafood than we do. It's a shame, but that is the way it is at the moment. I do not buy any seafood that is packed under atmosphere because even as a chef, I find it very difficult to know how fresh or otherwise it is until I've got it at home and unwrapped it. But definitely this is really, really fresh salmon. I do have a picture of the salmon that was on my counter yesterday, and if I can remember how to bring that up, I will bring it up and show you guys. So for the moment, we're going to put that salmon back in the fridge. And when you're thinking about doing something like let me just open back up for a second. When you're thinking about doing a for Valentine's dinner. You don't want huge amounts of food. These are about 140, 145 gram pieces. That is absolutely plenty for a portion. So put that salmon back away, and we will go now and check. Okay, great. So I hope you can all see that. That was the salmon I had on my counter yesterday, and it is absolutely pristine. You can see how iridescent the skin is. You can see that the eyes are nice and bright, and if I'd have taken another picture with the gills, so you could see the gills, you would see that the gills are nice and red, not brown or grey, which is another sign of freshness. This was a fresh whole piece of salmon. This is about 3 kilos, just over 3 kilos, 3 kilos, 100 grams of whole salmon, and it was well worth the train trip to go down and buy some fresh salmon. So we're going to go back to the face cam for a second and give everyone an opportunity. Is there any particular questions you have about buying your seafood that you'd like to ask? Okay, well, if there's any questions you have during the whole of the lesson, then absolutely leave them in, because what we'll do is we will put the live broadcast up so you can re-watch it probably by tomorrow. We'll just edit it a little bit to take any pauses out or anything like that. So still, please go back to it. I don't put up any adverts on during the live broadcast, and I only have minimal amount of adverts in the rebroadcast if you watch one of my live broadcasts, and that is because I do believe that there's way too many adverts on YouTube. Anyway, right, we're going to go back now to the stove. So we'll go to the stove camera, and we'll look at our melted chocolate, which by now is just about fully melted. I have to make sure that the water is not touching the bowl. And as soon as the chocolate is fully melted, what we're going to do is we're going to get some cling wrap, some saran wrap, and we're going to cover the bowl just to keep it melted so it doesn't start cooling down too much. So, and it's always good when you're melting chocolate to keep that chocolate moving so that the temperature is even. Earlier on today, when I did my chocolate forms, which you'll see later on, tempering the chocolate and having the correct temperature when you're tempering chocolate is very important, which I will put a link tomorrow when we put this broadcast up. I will put a link in that will show you how to make the chocolate form. So now you can see that all the chocolate is melted, and we're just off camera. I am washing my whisks. So we're just going to take this bowl over to the cutting board for a second, and once we get to the cutting board, we're just going to take some cling film, and we're just going to cling film the ball just to keep it warm, and then we're going to start whisking up our egg yolks. Now you could whisk the egg yolks by hand using a hand whisk, but it will be quicker if you have a little electric mixer. So I'm just making sure I've got my whisks clean. It is important when you're doing something like this to make sure you've got nothing on the whisks, that they are clean. And we're going to now take our egg yolks and sugar. I'm going to go back over to the stove, and we'll start whisking the egg yolks and the sugar up. So we'll go to camera number 2 over the stove, and we'll get our trusty little hand blender, and we'll put our beater blades in there. And this is going to take about 5 or 6 minutes to beat this up. The purpose of this is to really put lots of air into the egg mix to make the mousse, the chocolate mousse, really nice and light. see that the egg starts to get lighter and lighter, so we need to keep an eye on that. We do to make, when you're ever whisking eggs over water, you don't want the water too hot. I've got this on number 6, and you also, just like when you're melting chocolate, you want to make sure that the bowl is not touching the water. From time to time, it's good to lift the bowl out of the water to make sure the water is not boiling. I've got it on number 6. I think I'll take it down to number 5. So you're not trying to scramble your eggs, you're just trying to aerate and make a mousseline with the eggs. If at any point you think the egg mix is getting too hot, then you can lift the bowl off the water. Now I've probably got about 2 more minutes to do of the mixing of the eggs, but what we're looking for is not just to lighten the colour of the eggs, but also to feel that there's no, if you feel it between your fingers, that there's no grains of sugar, that the sugar is melted completely into the eggs. Probably going to give it 1 more minute, and then we'll take this off the hot water. Okay, that's enough. So we're going to move that now over to the cutting board. And while we've got you over on the stove, we're going to go to camera number 1. And we're going to blanch our parsnips. Remember, we have this water on here. It doesn't have any salt in it, so we need to put some salt in it. Whenever you're seasoning water for vegetables, you need enough salt in so you can taste the salt. If you can't taste the salt, it needs a tiny bit more. So we're just, okay, needs just a tiny bit more. And then it needs a moment to dissolve, so you know it actually is dissolved in there. So we'll turn our water up. We had turned it down a little bit while I was dealing with the chocolate. And we want to bring this up to a boil, and then we'll put our parsnips on. We're going to go, while we're waiting for that, we're going to go back to the cutting board, and we're going to show you, because now we've taken this off the heat, we still need to whisk it for another couple of minutes just to help start cooling it down. just going to get myself a silicone spatula, just so I can from time to time just use the silicone spatula to go around the bowl, just to make sure that it's all mixing nice and evenly. So we'll just take a silicone spatula and just turn it over, and then we'll whisk this again for another minute. Then we're going to give it another 30 seconds, but we have our parsnip water is boiling now, so we're just going to stop for a second, just go back to the stove, and we'll drop, you can see that the water is simmering, and we'll drop our 150 grams of parsnips in there. Remember, we're going to roast these parsnips and then finish them with a little bit of Padano cheese. Padano cheese is just very, very similar to Parmesan cheese, and I have 30 grams here, and I've just grated it very, very finely with my rasp zester, so it's nice and fluffy, and we'll sprinkle that onto the roasted parsnips. So we need to give that 3 minutes just to come up to the boil and soften a little bit, and then we'll drain it in cold water, and then let them really drain well before we start to roast them. Back over on the chopping board, we're going to mix this up for another 30 seconds. And we're going to start mixing in our melted chocolate. So you can see the process is very, very simple. Just checking on the messages to make sure there's no one else that's asked any questions. I know there are a few more people viewing the live demo, hiding, never mind. So we're going to uncover now our melted chocolate, and we're going to slowly whisk in our chocolate into the egg mix. So we'll take some of the melted chocolate, and we'll whisk that in. And of course, I want to make sure that from time to time I scrape the bowl down just to make sure it's all mixing in nice and evenly. And take that spatula back out of the way, and then we will put some more chocolate into our mix. Remember, we've got melted 100 grams of chocolate. And we are going to, you can see how thick the chocolate mix is getting. I hope you can see that. I'm moving the whisk, trying to move the whisk back without covering the cutting board. Right, we're going to put the rest of the mix. In fact, what I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to do this, which is what I do sometimes. I'm putting the chocolate mousse mix. Make sure that it all gets into the bowl. So it doesn't matter whether we put the egg mix into the chocolate or the chocolate mix into the egg. The main thing is that we don't lose any of the mix, because this isn't a huge batch of some mix. And you can see how thick it has gone. So it is at this point we are going to take a little bit of our coffee And we're also going to stop for a second because we need to remember that we have our parsnips on the stove. So we're just going to take our parsnips off the stove, go back to the stove view. We're just going to take those parsnips off. They've had about 3 minutes now at a very modest heat. And we really need to cool them down. And we need to get a colander, something like this, that we can drain the parsnips into. So we'll drain the parsnips, the cold parsnips, into that. We'll turn the stove off, we don't need that on. And we'll let that sit there and get nice and drained before we start to roast them off. Going back now to the chocolate mousse on the cutting board. So we've combined the mixture. I need to get my trusty plastic scraper, which is always very, very handy. If you don't ever see any of these, sometimes you might see it in a specialty shop. If you don't see it in a specialty shop, you can just cut a plastic milk bottle to make this kind of moon shape, because however good a silicone spatula is, it's a little bit soft when it comes to getting everything out of the bowl, but a plastic scraper really scrapes everything up, because we don't want to leave half that mix in that bowl, and for that mixture to then, the recipe to be not quite enough mix. And we're also going to put a little bit more of that coffee, that espresso coffee mix in there, just to thin it down a little bit. We'll turn it on a slow speed. Now the idea of combining coffee with chocolate is one that chefs have done for many years. And see how luscious this is. So we'll gradually, if I'd added all the coffee at one time, it would just splash everywhere. So I'm just adding a little bit at a time. And it's really adding that extra dark note to the chocolate. And chefs like Marco Pierre White often add coffee to their chocolate mousses. Right, so we just need to scrape the bowl down again, and then we're going to start folding in our, put that over there for a second, we'll start folding in our whipped cream. You can see that it's still quite thick at the moment, and of course the whipped cream will thin it down a little bit more and make it lighter, and then we want it to get it set. So we'll get my cream out of the fridge. Remember, we've got our cream is in a nice cold bowl. So we're going to take a good portion of that cream. And we'll, first and foremost, I'm going to get my silicone spatula back. And we're just going to fold the cream in. Start by folding that cream in. I hope you can see that. I'll get my whisker blades out of the whisk, and just because I don't really need to whisk it anymore, I just want to take all that chocolate that's on those blades off out of the way. and we'll move that out of the way. So we've just got 2 bowls there instead of 3. Move the whisk out of the way. And continue to fold that cream into that chocolate mix. We want it all nice and smooth. We don't want it sort of streaky in appearance. So, and once we have a nice even colour to the chocolate mousse, then it's ready to pour it into our moulds. Remember, we have the chocolate forms that I did earlier today, and there will be a link to a video. I do have a video of how to do the chocolate forms, so if you look to the live stream tomorrow, in the description there will be a link of how to make the chocolate forms we're using. I've just kept the chocolate mousse just as a dark chocolate mousse, but my chocolate forms I have white and dark chocolate for contrast. And we'll see how many of those forms we've got chocolate mousse to put into. I just want to keep stirring that chocolate mousse until it's completely the same colour, and then we'll start filling up the forms, and then we can put it in the fridge to set. So, and we are going to put some of our cherry mix into the mousse. So what we will do is we'll put a little spoonful of mousse into the chocolate form, followed by a little bit of cherry, and then more chocolate mousse. So there's kind of like a little bit of hidden cherry in the middle of the chocolate mousse, which would be really nice. I think almost there. Let's make sure we've got everything off. Make sure we're not wasting any of our mix. Right, we're going to take everything out of the way. I'm just going to turn that little bit of last little bit of cream. Remember, we're looking for it to be completely all the same colour. I think that looks pretty good. And we are now going to go and get our chocolate forms. So we'll take a quick look at the chocolate forms. Let's move the chocolate mousse out of the way for a second. And I made 4 white and 4 dark. I may not have enough mousse for all that. And it's a matter of you have a piece of acetate, and then you paint it with dark or white chocolate, and then you tape it together with a little piece of sellotape, and that's what holds it together. And we are going to turn these up like that, and we're going to see how many of these we can fill. I could probably fill, I would have thought, about 6. So we're going to move things a little bit out of the way, and we need to get a spoon small enough, so because we don't want to get chocolate mousse all over the place. So perhaps actually this size, smaller than a dessert spoon. So we're going to put some of the mousse in. Let that drop in, and probably I think we've got enough for about 6, I would think. Right, and we'll do 3 of the dark. And we, as I said, we're going to put some of the, trying to get the best ones. We're going to put a spoonful of the mousse in, and then we're going to put a little bit of the cherry mix in, and then top it up with whatever mousse we have left. And we're going to put that in the fridge to set. I know this is quite ambitious for me to do this in just a 2-hour lesson. But it is Valentine's Day, so at least Valentine's cooking lesson, I should say. So I hope you'll stay with me regardless of what the finish time is. So we've got our mix in there. We just want to take literally about 2 cherries in each. So about 2 cherries in each mousse, 2 or 3 maximum. If the cherries are really small, use 3. That one, maybe a bit more on that one. Okay, a little bit more just there. And then we're going to put the cherry mix back in the fridge, out of the way. And we're going to get the mixture that we've got left and see if we can top these. Now I'm doing this recipe, this particular combination, for the first time today. So I'm not exactly sure of what the yield is, but I will adjust the recipe accordingly. I'll definitely get 6 of them. And I'm trying not to get it around the edge. Just go gently in the filling of it. And this one, I'm scraping off the chocolate mousse from the silicone spatula in the background here, because I don't want to waste any of it. I hope you can still see that on camera. Okay, I'm just very gently excuse my fingers, but my fingers are incredibly clean, having scrubbed them so many times today. Right, I'm going to take a second to scrape the ball. We are at that point. Scraping that ball down. And as I'm trying not to get the chocolate over the edge if I can help it. Now we are going to probably top these when they are set. We are going to top them with a little bit more of the cherry mix. But we'll leave that, we'll allow the chocolate mousse to set up first before we do that. Now ideally the chocolate mousse you want to do it the day before, but then if I did it the day before you wouldn't see how I've done it. So that's why I'm trying to do it live. Just a little bit more, don't waste any. So I think that is good. We will wash my hands again. And we're going to put the chocolate mousse. We will get palette knife, I think, just very, no, I think the palette knife is still in the sink. Later on I will try to smooth them off a little bit more, or I could, if you don't have a palette knife, you could just take a teaspoon just to make them a little bit smoother. Right, we're going to put those away in the fridge, so I need to make space in my fridge, and we will start talking about the sauce. And how we're going to make our sauce for our salmon. So put those away in the fridge. Okay, and we'll move this chocolate out of the way. And we'll get some anti-bac cleaner and wipe that cutting board down. Chocolate gets everywhere. Right. So, we are next going to talk about and make the sauce for the salmon. I'm just taking a second to fill up my sink, put things in soak. Right, so the sauce for the salmon is made from peas, made from chicken stock, or you can use fish stock if you wanted to make some fish stock. I could have taken the salmon bones and made some fish stock, but I already had some chicken stock in my fridge, so I froze my salmon bones and decided to use the chicken stock. So I have 300 milliliters there. We're going to move that to one side, and we're going to get our food processor up. So into the food processor, and I'm going to check on the camera to make sure you can see that. Okay, we are going to put 300 grams of thawed out frozen peas. They're just ordinary bog standard frozen peas I bought from Tesco, 300 grams, and we're going to put 2/3 of the chicken stock in there, so about 200 milliliters. Doesn't need to be exact, but I don't want to put all of the liquid in there. And then we're going to puree this for about 4 or 5 minutes just to make it really smooth. Now after this is blended for about 3 minutes, we'll give it another minute. After this is blended for about 3 minutes, we will add the remaining chicken stock. So it's had about another minute, so we're just going to see how wonderful and green that is. So we are going to put the remaining 100 milliliters of stock, so that's 300 milliliters of stock. And again, the idea of this whole recipe is to have something lots of flavor but light that you can eat for a romantic dinner. think about 30 seconds more. The reason we want it really well pureed is we're going to strain this, and the finer it is, the easier it will be to strain. And when you're doing this, you want to thaw out the peas a good 4 or 5 hours beforehand, because you don't want to be putting the frozen peas straight from the bag into this, because it will just make a hell of a mess. So we're now going to take, I'm just going to remove the sections of the food processor. We're going to take this food processor over to the stove. In fact, I could do it probably right here. And we'll bring the saucepan over. I hope you can see that right there. And we're going to strain the pea. This needs to be enough sauce for 2 people. And we will reduce it down a little bit, but it's important not to lose any. So it's very important when you're straining it to really be patient, to have a good strong sieve, and to really work that mixture against the side of the strainer, because you really want the pulp to be very dry. Otherwise you're going to do 2 things. One, you're going to lose too much sauce, and 2, you are going to not have it thick enough for what we want. So we will now pour the rest of the sauce on, but then we need to continue working that through, whether you use a spoon or whether you use silicone spatula. Let's just make sure we don't lose any of that sauce. Right, so we'll just keep working it through. It takes a few minutes, but while we're doing that, I want to sort of tell you a little bit about my experiences working as a chef on Valentine's Day. Most chefs hate Valentine's Day for lots of different reasons. They don't like Valentine's Day because they can't spend it with the one they love. They're working. They don't like Valentine's Day because they don't get paid extra for working Valentine's Day, but it's often a very busy, stressful day. Some restaurants, unless you're the chef owner of the restaurant, some restaurants will double book and overbook the restaurant, trying to maximize the number of covers, the number of people they can serve in that day. What that means for the kitchen is they need to have a shrunk down menu, and you need to be very organized. What it means for the customers is sometimes if you go into a restaurant and they've got 2 sittings for Valentine's Day, if you are on the early sitting, then you'll have people starting to ask you to, are you ready for the bill now, sir? Because they want to reset that table and sell it again. And often you'll pay quite extra high prices on Valentine's Day. That is why I think to be really romantic, you're far better off to plan and make your own Valentine's special meal. 2 courses, a main course and a dessert, and you could have something really nice like this and save yourself a lot of money. And then for your Valentine, they will see just how much you care for them, because you've taken all the time and trouble to do this yourself. So I'm just continuing to work that pea pulp through the strainer. Now I've guesstimated that I need to have about 120 grams to know that I've strained it enough. I've guesstimated that I need to have 120 grams of pulp left. If I have more than 120 grams, I haven't pushed enough through. So we're going to have a look in a minute and see how much we push this through to see whether we have got 120 grams or more. Let's just have a quick look. We've got it on 0. So I'm almost there. I've got 126 grams. So it didn't take me long. Just a good sturdy sieve, which isn't an easy thing to find these days, a good sturdy sieve. And just keep working that pulp against the side. And if you've got 120 grams left, then you know that your sauce is pushed through enough. I think we've just about done that. Let's just try one last time, just for my curiosity, your curiosity. Yeah, we've got 119 grams there, 124. I think I'll cut myself some slack and say that's good enough. So we've got now this puree, this pulp of peas. You could make something from that. It doesn't mean you've necessarily got to throw it in the bin. But I'm not going to do anything with it tonight. I will put it into, because you know you have peas pudding or things like a puree of peas, mushy peas. You could use this for lots of different things if you wanted to. We're going to put this onto the stove on a low heat, and we're going to take this. I have a half a level tablespoon of corn flour or cornstarch if you're American, and we're just going to put enough cold water in that just to make a paste. And then when the sauce has come up to the heat, we're going to mix that into it. So I'm just going to get a little bit of cold water. I have in one of my ramekins over here. Literally just enough cold water in there just to make a paste. And we will save those peas. We'll just put it into a smaller container. I think probably that one will be elegant sufficiency. Put a lid. And we will, let's get another spoon. It's going to be a bit of a clear up tonight, but hey. So we will make something from the pulp. There's lots of things we can do. We could add some mint to it. We could add some garlic to it. We could even add some mashed potato to it. We could put it into an omelette, make a vegetarian omelette. Really tasty. Right. So over here we have our half tablespoon of corn flour or cornstarch. We're going to move the scale out the way. We have our parsnips here that have dried out well, and we're going to take a tablespoon of let me juggle things around a little bit on the stove. I think we need to move that out of the way for the moment, Kev. Okay, so we're going to go back to the stove view in a second, and we'll show you, let's show you the whole stove view for a second. Let's go to pardon me. Right, all stove view, number 5. Okay, so on this burner we have our pea puree with the chicken stock, which we're going to heat up and thicken with a little corn flour. Here we've got our 325 grams of baby potatoes. We're going to bring that up to a simmer, and we're going to salt that as soon as it comes up to a simmer. In the frying pan we're going to roast our parsnips. So we're going to turn on our oven to 180 degrees Celsius. That's about 375 Fahrenheit. And we're going to start our parsnips in the frying pan. So we're going to get a tablespoon, about a tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil. And we want to get that hot because we want to get those parsnips nice and brown. So, waiting for things to happen, we're going to go back to the cutting board for a second, and we're going to talk about what other flavour we have for our salmon sauce. So we'll go to the cutting board, and we have tarragon. Tarragon is a wonderful herb. You don't see it always in the supermarkets as often, unfortunately. It's got a wonderful slight aniseed flavour, and somewhere in my fridge I have a ramekin. I think I have a ramekin, or maybe it might be on the back. No, it's actually over here. Okay, we've got about 5 grams. We're going to just re-weigh this, and we're going to chop up. I think we got 5 grams, so let's just check again. 3 grams, which actually is probably enough. So we're going to, if it's grown indoors, you probably need about 5 grams, but if it's grown outdoors, which this is, then probably 3 grams will be enough. We're just going to put that out on the cutting board, and we're going to get a large knife, and we want to chop this down really, really fine. And we're going to put this into our pea sauce, so it's pea and tarragon is the flavour. And it smells absolutely wonderful when you chop this up. But we do want to get it pretty fine. So the sauce, this very posh looking sauce when you see it on the plate, very, very simple, made from frozen peas and chicken stock, a little bit of corn flour, cornstarch, and some fresh tarragon. So we're going to put that up on the knife, and we're going to put that into the saucepan that has the pea sauce in. We're going to go over to the stove again, and we'll look at the whole of the stove. So I've put my tarragon in there, and we've got this on number 6, and it will come up to a simmer. It doesn't need much boiling down, and then we will thicken it with our cornstarch. Remember, there's half a tablespoon of corn flour, cornstarch, just mixed with enough water to make a paste. We're going to use that as a thickening agent. It doesn't just thicken the sauce, it also helps to hold it together. Whenever you have a puree, say for instance if you have carrot soup, I'm going to take this off because it's getting a little too hot for a second while I talk. If you have carrot soup, I often thicken carrot soup with just a little bit of cornstarch and water, which holds the carrots together with the liquid so it doesn't separate, and you get a really nice smooth texture. We're going to take some of that olive oil because it's nice and hot, and we're just going to take, I've got a little bit more than I need. I'm going to take some of it off, and now we're going to put our parsnips in there. Make sure the parsnips are nice and dry. You don't want lots of water in the pan. And we're going to now come with the black pepper, and a little salt. And we want to get these lightly brown, and then we're going to put them into the oven to finish off. So give them a good either a stir around or shake them like I did. On the front here, let's go to burner number 1. We have potatoes, and then we need to get those up to heat now. I'm going to add a tiny bit more water to that, and remember we want to get that simmering before we add the salt there. The pea sauce, we're going to go back over to the pea sauce. Pea sauce is just about coming up to a simmer, so we need to get something like a wooden spoon or a spatula, and we're going to stir in now that, and it's not a huge amount of thickening agent, but it thickens it and it holds the pea puree together to create this wonderful verdant green sauce. Now don't forget we've got the parsnips at the back here, so let's not forget the parsnips. So we're going to toss those parsnips, and because the pan was hot, they'll start to burn, they'll start to brown really quickly. We don't want them brown, we don't want them burnt, we want them nicely crispy, nice sort of level of brownness on them. We want to brown them just a little bit more than they are, and we'll see if we can zoom in on that, see if we can zoom in to show you. Okay, and we are going to turn the heat down. I've still got that on really on high on mine. If I feel that they need a little bit more sort of enriching, I could add a little piece of butter to that, and perhaps I will add a little butter when they come back out of the oven. I think I will add just a tiny bit more of that oil I took out, the olive oil. And I think at this point you can see, I hope you can see on the camera, you see it there, it's got quite a lot of nice colour going on. I'm just going to hit those parsnips with a tiny bit of butter, I think. I did talk about the possibility that I might add a little bit of butter, and I literally tiny bit of butter just to enrich it. And then we're going to put the parsnips to roast into the oven. I want them to roast in the oven and get them really nice and tender, so we'll just shake the pan around a little bit just to get that butter coated on them. Make sure that the oven has actually gone back on. Yeah, it is on, so we're now going to transfer our parsnips to the oven. And they will take about 10 minutes just to get nice and tender. Here on the front, on burner number 1, we have our baby potatoes, which should have come up to the boil before now, but because of the power cut, I haven't. But we'll bring that up to the boil. Let's just also have a look at our pea sauce. Now I have turned the heat off because remember, everything in this sauce is already cooked. I've used frozen peas, chicken stock, tarragon, a little bit of corn flour, cornstarch and water, and we just want to make sure we have the right consistency. So let's just, I may want to thin that down just reduce it down just a little bit, but for the moment I'm going to keep the lid on, because if I keep the lid on it then it's not going to evaporate, because I can always bring it up to the heat and really boil it hard to get it thicker if I want it. But the potatoes are going to take about 20 minutes or so. So we need to get the potatoes really going before we start concerning ourselves with starting cooking the salmon or finishing the dessert or anything like that. Here is a pasta bowl that we're going to serve the salmon in. So we're going to put some of the pea sauce in there, and then we're going to take a cookie cutter. I'm going to use a 3-inch cookie cutter, and this cookie cutter, you have a fluted side and you have a plain side, and we're going to put the cookie cutter on there. In fact, we'll do this before we put the sauce in, and we're going to take our baby potatoes and we're going to crush them down, drizzle them with a little bit of olive oil and put the potatoes there. Then we're going to very gently take the cookie cutter off, so we have a nice circular mound of baby potatoes in the center of the plate, and then we're going to put the sauce around very gently, and then we'll lay the salmon on the top of the potatoes. So that's what we're going to do with that. And for the dessert, we're going to use, I think, a blue plate. So I'll get the blue plate that we're going to use. And we also need to melt still a little bit of chocolate for that. So there is the blue plate I'm going to use for my Valentines, and I want to try to incorporate my little So, and we're also maybe going to scatter some of these little red hearts on the plate. So we'll see. We want to be creative. We don't want to overcrowd the plate, because the thing that people tend to do, I might put the love back off there, or I might leave it over like that. And this ramekin, we may put a little bit of extra of the cherry mix in there. I haven't decided. So in here, these are these, if I can remember how to undo this packet, these are I've used for the, see if I can remember, is it a, yeah, I think I might have just stapled it, that's what I did. These are really cute little glass or plastic hearts, and we might scatter a few of those onto the plate too, because it's Valentine's. Right, so that's the general idea of what we're going to try to do. We're going to move this out of the way for the moment so I don't get it messed up. So our potatoes are cooking nicely, so we're going to go back over to our stove and have a look. Hopefully everything is going to stay on now. And we don't want, whenever you're cooking potatoes, you don't want it boiling up really hard, because they don't cook evenly like that. You want it about 6 or 7 so that they'll cook nice and evenly. So there's still probably a good 15 minutes or so of cooking time with that. And we really want to, when you're making a meal, you're thinking about timing everything. That's what a kitchen does. So if I show you on the overall stove, we're going to put our salmon on the back, but there's no point in starting cooking our salmon until our potatoes are pretty much done, and we'll just move the potatoes to one side. We're also going to take a look in a moment at our parsnips, see how our parsnips are doing. They've had about 5 minutes in here so far. So we'll just shake those parsnips, they're looking rather good. And we want to have a little ramekin, some kind of container, because I don't want to put that on the plate, because these I want these to be a little bit crisper than they are now. And we're going to sprinkle the cheese on them, so we don't want to get them nice and crisp and then put them on a sauce. So we will get some kind of container and just put those to one side, off to the side. So we'll put those parsnips back in the fridge for the moment, and take this down because it's still boiling quite hard. Now when we cook the salmon, we'll get a frying pan. We'll get the frying pan hot. So I've got a nice non-stick frying pan here, and we'll get some oil hot in there, and we want to brown the salmon off, but we don't want to cook the salmon completely in the frying pan. We can do, but it will take a long time. If we get it with some colour on the skin a little crisp, and then finish it off in the oven, because we've already got the oven on for the parsnips. So we are going to juggle things around a little bit, and we'll have a look at our for the moment, let's have a look at our mousse. Let's have another look at our chocolate mousses. And of course, we don't want to take off, when it comes to the chocolate mousse, we don't want to take off the collars until we're ready to unwrap them. And because these haven't had hours and hours sitting in the fridge, we want to be careful. We don't want the mousse to fall out the bottom. So we'll have to be a little bit careful, but we're going to lay sort of one dark petal, if you will, next to a white petal to give them kind of a shape of a heart, and then we want to decorate them somehow. So we've got the options. We could spoon a little bit of the cherries on the top, which is probably the way I'm going to go, but I also want to perhaps get some melted chocolate. So I've got some little bit of white chocolate here. So we're going to put these back in the fridge out of the way for the moment. And we've also got some dark chocolate somewhere over here. And we're going to, this is what I had left from making the collars earlier on. And we're just going to soften these up. Whenever you're reheating white chocolate, it is a little bit more problematic because it dehydrates a lot when you make that initial melt. So I'm going to put a little bit of water in there, a little bit of cold water. I'm going to put some water in and then pour it off. So I've put some water in and pour it off. Sometimes you see chefs use a little bit of vegetable oil as well, because it's very easy to split chocolate when you, particularly white chocolate, when you are reheating it. So we could put it in the microwave, or I could take it over to the stove and I could set that over the potatoes and put that on like that to melt those two chocolates for a minute, which is what I think I'll do to start the process off. So we'll wipe this cutting board down again, and we're also going to look at this tarragon one more time. We'll get the tarragon out of the bag. I want to look for a few nice leaves to decorate with. So maybe like that one. The condition of the tarragon is pretty good. Of course, squeezing it into the bag and then taking it out again. And we're just going to set that on a little bit of water. We'll just get a ramekin. We're just going to put a little bit of water on the bottom. I'm just going to lay that in there, just so it doesn't get too dry looking in the heat of the kitchen. So we've got that like that, and we'll decide how much of that tarragon we're going to use as a garnish. Remember, the sauce also has tarragon in it, that's why we're using it to decorate it. And we'll go over now and look at the sauce. I'm going to put the sauce probably back on a very low. So we'll go to number 3, number 2. So let's have another look at the sauce. We're almost there. Just on a very, very low heat, it's reducing down. You don't want it super, super thick. So that's why I've got that lid on there. It's just, I've got it on number 1. It still will reduce down if I have the lid slightly ajar, like that. And over on number 1, I've got those 2 chocolates. What I might do with the chocolate when I've melted it is I might just take a teaspoon. I could put it into a piping bag and pipe it, but I think I'm just going to go with a little teaspoon. I think I'm going to take the white chocolate and try melting it and see if it melts okay, which is a bit tricky. And we're going to give it very short blasts in the microwave for about 20 seconds. And this chocolate here is getting the steam coming up from the bottom. So if I put that lid on as well, that will help to hold the heat in, because we want to melt that chocolate and just be able to drizzle. I do have time, so I could make a piping bag. Do I have any piping bags made? Let me have a quick look in my cupboard. See if I have any at the back, because there were lots of different things, ideas I had of what to do when it came to decorating this, and then I had to rein myself in because it's what I have time to do in 2 hours. So we're going to go back to the cutting board and we're going to really quickly show you how to make a piping bag. So we're going to turn the cutting board over, and we're just going to tear off a small section of baking paper or parchment paper. The Americans call it parchment paper. We call it, generally speaking, we call it baking paper. I sometimes get a little confused between the American terminology for things and the British terminology, so pardon me if I'm causing mass confusion. So we've got our section there, a rectangular section of baking paper, and now we want to just fold it like that. Really simple. And we'll have one piping bag for the white chocolate. By making a bag, it will give us a little bit more control in the pour. So we've got two triangular shapes that have, because the way I've cut it has a square section like that. So we just, you take the pointed edge on the outside and you just bring it up like that, and you just fold it in like that, and fold it in again. Some chefs even actually tear it. So we'll show you one more time, and then we'll have a look, see how our chocolate is doing. So that's our two little piping bags for white chocolate and dark chocolate, just to decorate dessert with. We'll have a look, see how the chocolate is doing. We'll get okay, and we're going to put a little bit of cream in there, just to thin it down a little bit. So it's a mixture. It's starting to split, but if it splits and you mix a little water and a little cream in, it can bring it back. And remember, we don't need this to be as thick. We just need it to be pipeable. So we're going to use a tiny bit more splash of cream, and then we'll take a look at the dark chocolate. It's always a bit difficult when you're reheating white chocolate. As I said, I have seen chefs use a little bit of vegetable oil sometimes, but I don't particularly want to do that. So this is a nice pouring consistency now. Just make sure that all the lumps have melted out, and that will stay liquid for quite a while now. So we will probably cling wrap that, because it will help to hold it a little bit of the heat in, so it doesn't get solid until we come to the point where we are decorating the dessert. So in the meantime, we're going to go back and pull the parsnips out, because I think the parsnips are almost done. And remember, we're going to put cheese on them, but I don't want to put the cheese on just yet, so we'll hold that to one side. And if you follow me over to the stove now, and go to overall on the stove. So remember, we've got our potatoes here, so we'll have a look for a second how our potatoes are doing. They've probably got about 3-4 minutes left, and we've got them on a low heat. We've got them on number 5, so they're just simmering gently. That's really good. We're also going to take another look on the cutting board at the dark chocolate, but before that, let's have a look at our parsnips. So we'll take the parsnips out of the oven. They're looking really good, nice and crisp. Lovely, lovely colour on there. So let's just see if we can zoom in just a little bit on number one. Let's see if we can zoom. Let's, I think, we'll zoom back out. Okay. So the parsnips are exactly where we want them, but we don't want to cook them anymore at the moment. So we're just going to take that to one side. We're just going to put them on the back. And we're going to start getting our pan hot now for our salmon. And once the salmon is in the oven, then we can carry on sorting out our dark chocolate for the pudding. I've got that tiny little bit of olive oil. I'm just going to lay the ramekin in there for a second because olive oil is quite thick, particularly extra virgin olive oil, and I don't want to throw that away. It's quite expensive, so I want to make sure I get everything out of that ramekin into that frying pan. So we're going to add a little bit more olive oil, and I'm going to put that heat on, and I want to get it on to about 7. So take the top off. Don't need a huge amount of oil, and I've got 2 pieces of salmon, but I'm just going to cook the 1 piece for the moment because we're going to set the plate, and then when my beloved wife is ready for dinner, I will cook another fresh piece of salmon so she gets the salmon nice and fresh. So I'm going to go back to the cutting board, and we're going to go to have a look at the dark chocolate there. It's melted somewhat. Let's take the cling film off, have a look, and we'll get a little spoon, see if it needs thinning down a little bit. No, I think that's pretty good as is. So I'm just going to cling wrap that again, and I want to just try to keep them warm without getting hot. So I can pour that chocolate into those piping bags when the time comes. So we're going to keep that chocolate to one side, put the cream back away, and I'm going to straighten up this piping bag just a little bit. It does look a bit chewed up. That one's the better one. So sometimes you might see people when they're filling up the piping bag, just to make it a little easier to do, you can take a glass and you can just put the piping bag in the glass so it's holding steady, because it's kind of fiddly, particularly because they're quite small when you're trying to fill something up. So that's what we'll do. We'll put the white chocolate in there, and we'll put the dark chocolate in there, and also this, I haven't quite got this to the point. When I've got it to a really tight point, the chocolate will not pour out, so I have to be aware that may pour straight out. And on this one I do have to a nice point, so when I'm ready to pipe with it, I'll just get a sharp scissors or a knife and just cut off the end and just drizzle it across the chocolate mousses. So I think at this point we're waiting for the pan to get hot. I think in the meantime we're going to have a look at these, and I think we're going to see which one is the best one. I think possibly this one. You see it's still a little bit soft there, and we're going to take some of the cherry mixture. So let's take these 2, and what I need is I need to get my palette knife. Now of course these should be, set in the fridge for hours, but I'm going to turn this around so they're movable. So these 2 we're going to put cherries onto, I think, particularly so. and a little bit of cherry on the dark one. I just wanted enough cherries just to cover up that chocolate so you can't see the chocolate mousse. So a tiny bit more on the white one, and then we'll drizzle a little bit of the melted chocolate around, I think. So we'll put these back in the fridge and we'll get our salmon out and we'll start our salmon, cooking our salmon. So we've got our cheese, 30 grams of Padano cheese for our parsnips, and we're going to cook one of these pieces of salmon. When you start the salmon off, you want to make sure the pan is hot, and we're going to start with the skin side down. So I'm going to go back to the stove. We're going to make sure we have the stove on nice and hot. Number 3. And as you've seen me do before, I'm just checking, and that is not that hot yet. It's only on number 6, so we need to get it up to about 8 to start with. You're always going to be a little bit careful in domestic houses these days because the smoke alarms go off at the drop of a hat. Nevertheless, you want to have a nice hot pan to seal the salmon. So I'm going to close the kitchen door, make sure that I don't set the alarms off, and I want to really be able to feel that heat on my hand before I put that salmon in. Another thing, when the oil starts running around the frying pan, is another sign that the pan is nice and hot. So I think we'll just add a tiny bit more oil, not much. I think we'll give it another minute, and then we'll put the salmon in skin side down. But we really do need to make sure that the pan is hot. We need to be patient with the pan. And let's just check the potatoes again on number 1, and then I think our pan will be by that time hot enough. So our potatoes are nice and tender. Remember what we're going to do with these. We're going to drain them well, and then we're going to crush them down and just add a little bit of olive oil. That's all. That's all we're doing to the potatoes. We could have added lots of different things. We could have added garlic. We could have had a whole bunch of herbs. But I want the potatoes to be quite clean and just taste the potatoes, because we've got the other tastes going on here. We've got the roasted parsnips, which will have cheese on. We've got the pea and tarragon sauce. So I wanted to keep my potatoes quite clean and just taste of nice buttery flavoured, earthy flavoured new potatoes. Right, so we're going to take our piece of salmon, and you can see, you can hear already as soon as I put it in the pan, it sizzles, which is what you want. And we're also going to get our salt and pepper, and we're going to season with a little bit of sea salt and a little bit of pepper. So we've got a pair of tongs. We could either use tongs or we could use a you can see that because the pan is a pretty decent pan, and because the pan was hot enough that the salmon is not sticking to the pan, and we want to let this go for about another 2 or 3 minutes before we turn it over. Once we turn it over, we want to get a good colour on this side before we put it into the oven. And then we're going to cook it to about 63 degrees because you don't want to overcook seafood. And so we will use our probe. We have our thermopan probe here. So we will just get the probe and put the probe in and make sure that it's about 62, 63 degrees. So we're now going to turn the salmon, and I want to seal all the sides, so I want to give it another minute just sitting on its side just like that, and then I want to do the same on the other side to seal those juices in before we put it flat like that. Remember, we have it on about 8, so you need to keep an eye on it. We don't want to get too brown, but we want to make sure that it's all nicely sealed in. Seal in all those juices before we put the salmon into the oven to finish off. Remember, I've got the oven on at 185 degrees Celsius, and we'll put the frying pan. That's why I like to have frying pans that have metal handles. So if I go back to the stove view, you can see that my frying pan has a metal handle. Just use a good oven cloth so you don't touch the handle when it's red hot. And then I hate all these frying pans and saucepans with plastic type handles. So I want a little bit more colour on the flesh side, and then we're going to put it in the oven, but I want to turn it all the way up before I put it into the oven. So I think that is a really nice colour right there. We're going to get my oven cloth, and we're going to fold it over a few times to make sure it's protecting my hand, and then we're going to put the salmon into the oven, and then we're going to put the parsnips over there. I have turned the heat down on the parsnips, but I'm going to scatter the cheese. I'm just going to put some of the cheese in there, and then we'll probably put some more cheese on when I'm serving it up. And I'm going to turn that heat off, and just the residual heat will sort of melt that cheese. You can see it's already melted it into the parsnips. I'll just move them around just a little bit, just so that cheesiness gets onto the parsnips. And that's all you need to do. Really that simple. We're going to move those parsnips back over to here away from the heat. Next we're going to sort out the potatoes. So we've got our strainer, and we're just going to check again to make sure the potatoes are nice and tender, and they are. So we are going to drain the potatoes, and we want to let them sit for a little while in the strainer. Let's go to camera number 1 for a close-up of that. I really want to let them drain a little bit, and then we're going to put a little bit more salt and pepper on them, and just a drizzle of olive oil. I would just put my thumb over the bottle of olive oil and drizzle a little bit of olive oil in. And we're just going to crush the potatoes up. Not much. We're not making mash. This is just crushed potatoes. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I'm going to go and check now the pea sauce, see how we're doing with that. We're in good shape. Pea sauce is looking good. Let's get another spoon and see. It's just evaporated just a little bit. Just a little bit. I'm going to, on number 1, I'll bring it up to number 2. Go ahead and carry on, just really reducing down really slowly. Remember, we have the lid on slightly ajar so it's still evaporating. Now we go back to the potatoes. By now they're nicely drained. But I think what I'm going to do at this point is I'm not going to mash them, and by leaving them over the water, that's keeping them nice and hot. And I've got the water on, I'll take the water down to about 3, but I want to keep those potatoes hot with the steam. I can also put the lid on if I want. But I want to keep them nice and hot, ready for when I'm mashing them, crushing my potatoes. We've got everything in pretty good order. We're waiting on the salmon. We need to get some kind of container for the parsnips. That would be ideal, I think, for the parsnips. My fancy smancy parsnip cup. So let me show you what I've chosen for the parsnips. Let's go over to the cutting board. I'm very lucky that I have all these fancy looking things. It's a cup, but wow, look at that. And we're going to put the parsnips in there just like a portion of chips. So we're going to put the parsnips in there and serve it to the side of the salmon when we serve the salmon. So we'll serve the salmon up first, and then we'll go with the dessert pretty much straight afterwards. I'll move the salmon out of the way. So let's have a look. I'm just taking a look at see if I've let's see if I've missed any of the chat in there. I did advertise the cooking lesson on Pinterest, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Blue Sky. So if you're taking a look and kind of hiding in the shadows, don't be shy. Come and say hello. Hi, my name is Kevin. I'm a chef and food writer. I love to cook online, share my culinary skills. Don't forget to like and subscribe. There are different ways that you can like and subscribe. You can subscribe on my YouTube channel, but if you want to join my regular cooking lessons, which happen every Tuesday, then you can join us via either the YouTube channel membership link or the Patreon membership link. And along with that, that will give you access to the online cooking lessons. Along with that, you'll also have access to our WhatsApp chat group. The WhatsApp chat group is a lively chat group, and when we are done with our online cooking lessons, I post all the recipes and links to videos, because not every video is posted to YouTube public. The private lessons are all kept access only for members, and if you join up, you can access the growing library of videos. We encourage everyone that joins to have a go at the recipe and be brave enough to post a picture in the WhatsApp chat and share it with everyone else. So we do hope you'll give that a think about, and like this video and subscribe. Right, we're going to go back over to the stove now. And we're going to now have a look at our salmon. Remember, we're looking for about 63 degrees. I don't think it'll be cooked yet, but we'll have a look. So our salmon. Okay, we are actually there. So we will take the salmon out of the oven, and now we can finish off the dish. So we're going to put our soup bowl, our pasta bowl, into the oven just to warm it up a little bit. and then we'll start putting the dish together. So remember, we've got our wonderful pasta bowl, and we're going to put that in the oven just to warm it up. I might also heat up a little bit of water in my kettle because I'd like to try to make sure that my food gets served on hot bowls, hot plates. So we'll put that on to heat. In the meantime, we're going to go over to burner number 1 and have a look at our potatoes. Remember, they've stayed hot because we had them over the water. So we're just going to get rid of that water now. And we're just going to put those potatoes back into the pan. And we're just going to season them very lightly with a little bit of salt and pepper. And then I'm going to take my olive oil and just put my thumb and just drizzle a little bit of olive oil over the potatoes, and then we're just going to crush them. Just crush them. That is enough. And I just want to shake that out of the masher, because I love all those skins. And we'll start setting the plate. I'm going to juggle this around, and I'm going to heat up the parsnips again just a little bit. So we'll go to the full stove. So we're heating up the parsnips again, and remember, we've got this extra cheese. A little bit of extra cheese over here. We're going to sprinkle a little bit more cheese on there. Remember, I started with 30 grams, and this was quite a generous amount of cheese. And we're also going to get the camera standing by because we're going to be shooting some pictures shortly. So we have our potatoes done, our parsnips heating up. Let's get our bowl out, and we're just going to give that a bit of a wipe. I'm going to get some hot water on a paper towel because I can suddenly see some smears on it. So we're going to just go to the cutting board view, and we'll make sure we've got this in frame so we get the whole thing. Plate's nice and hot. We're just going to dip some of that into, wipe that rim to make sure. Sometimes you don't see the smears until you ready to serve. Want to make sure that looks nice and clean. So, and we've got some hot water in that because we want that to be hot for the parsnips. So as I said, we're going to use a 3-inch cookie cutter. So we'll put the cookie cutter down there, and we'll first come along with our potatoes, and we're going to put some potatoes into that ring, some of the crushed potatoes. And remember, I've made this whole recipe is for 2 people, so I did 325 grams of potatoes. So I want to make sure I've filled that up quite well, because it's the potatoes that you're going to sit the salmon on. So you want it to be nice and solid so the salmon stays in place like that. I'm taking that off the heat, and remember, I want to press this down just a little bit. I'm going to get just a tiny bit more, and we're just going to press that down, really press that firmly down, and then we're going to just ease that up. If any little crumbs fall off, get those out the way. So we've got a nice solid base to put our salmon onto. And now we're going to bring that sauce right up to heat. So over on the stove, we're waiting for the sauce to come up to boil. In the meantime, I'm going to take the hot water out of this here, and we're going to dry it up, and then we're going to put some parsnips in there. And remember, we've got our roasted parsnips and delicious roasted parsnips, crispy roasted parsnips. Let's see if we can make them look and we've sprinkled just a tiny bit more. So we can turn that the other way, a little bit more colour on there, tiny bit more cheese on there. Right, now we're going to come with our sauce, and we need to be careful. As I said, whenever you're spooning sauce, you want to control where you put it. And I probably could have done with reducing this down just a little bit more, but wow, does it look amazing, that verdant green colour from the peas. And I want to have a decent amount of sauce. I've made enough sauce for 2 people, and this is also kind of not just a sauce, but it's also another vegetable because it's peas. And I think that's probably enough there, but I am going to get my paper towel, my wet paper towel, and take everything off the stove. I'm going to take my wet paper towel, and I just want to try to get that where the sauce is kind of like smeared a little bit, just trying to make it look as good as we could. Okay, now we're going to come with the salmon. So we'll get the palette knife and we'll get the salmon. Now I could put it skin side down, or I could put it flesh side up. That's a matter of personal taste there. And then finally we're going to get that little bit of the tarragon. Remember, we had that little bit of tarragon to the side there, and we just want to, I think this has got a little wilted in the heat, so I'm going to go back to the tarragon I had in the bag. It's not looking so wilted. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. Okay, maybe just a tiny bit more. Not quite getting it yet. Okay, we're going to take that off, and we're going to use a little less, I think. Right, I think that's good as is. Never mess with it too much. Okay, so here we have our delicious Valentine main course. I'm going to just go and get my camera and take some photographs. And is there a memory card? There is a memory card in the camera, that's all good. And do we need to move things back out of the way? Move all the chocolate or the gummins. Let's move that. So I hope you guys are inspired by my main course. Really simple, really, when you think about it. Just a sauce made from peas, chicken stock, nice really fresh piece of salmon, which makes all the difference. Don't settle for seafood that's packed under atmosphere. It's horrible stuff. Complain to your supermarket, tell them to get some fresh seafood in. If you live anywhere close to a fishmonger, support the fishmonger before we lose them all. If you live anywhere close to Morrison's, they have a fresh seafood counter. It's sometimes not the greatest, but sometimes it's brilliant. So keep supporting it. Right, now we're going to move our delicious salmon out of the way, and we're going to finish our dessert. So I think I'll have to do this in two journeys out the way. And we're on the final leg to finishing our delicious Valentine's dinner. So let's bring the plate into the picture. Remember, we're using the wonderful bright blue plate that I've left in the other room. And we're going to see what we can do to make this very Valentine. So we're going to put one dark chocolate, one white chocolate, and I think what we're going to do is I'm going to move this over here. We're going to go and the camera to the ingredients camera, and we're going to first check out that my chocolates are still liquid enough. We hope they are. Okay, that's still liquid. And let's check out the white chocolate. Should still be liquid. And we're going to fill up our little piping bags. So remember, we've got our 2 piping bags, so we'll take the white chocolate. It is setting up, so we hope that it is liquid enough. And you want to, whenever you're using a piping bag, you want to fold the ends over so it doesn't come out the top. And then we're going to get a sharp knife, and we're just going to cut off the end, just like that. Just make sure it's coming out the end. And we'll do the same with the dark chocolate. We'll put the dark chocolate into the little parchment paper, baking paper piping bag. And again, we will fold these over that way and that way. This one is already coming out. So I think we're going to move the letter love to the back. And I think the first thing we do is we're going to put some melted chocolate. Let's go to the cutting board camera. And we're going to just lattice some of the white and dark chocolate just across, just like that. Nothing too elaborate. Okay. And then we're going to get our 2 that we've got covered with the cherries. and we're going to bring those into picture. So let's go to ingredient camera, and we're going to show you how we unwrap the so we need to be careful. These have a little cling film, sorry, a little piece of sellotape, I should say. So I'm going to get a sharp knife, like a little paring knife, and just to gently cut through that now I need to do this very carefully. Normally they'd have hours and hours to sit in the fridge. Let's just and of course the collars are very so sorry if you can't see this well enough, but trying to take this off. Okay, good. We managed to get that off without breaking it, which is always a plus. So we're going to very gently move this one, the dark chocolate one, onto the plate. I need to make sure I get my palette knife right underneath. Do that. I don't want to touch the sides because it has a nice mirror finish to it because the chocolate has been tempered. So now we're going to get to this one. I'm going to move it over here, that's a little bit closer to me. And again we're going to, this one only had one piece of sellotape on it. So I just very gently need to okay, so and as it springs back, we hope it didn't break it, which it didn't. So again we're going to get my palette knife right gently. I'm going to clean my hands a little bit for a second. And it is quite warm in the kitchen, of course, because I've been cooking. So you want to sort of decorate your desserts before you and put those away in the fridge if you have the room. So we're just going to take that and we're going to put it as close as we can to that to make kind of like a heart shape, just like that. So I had hoped to make it look a little bit better, but we hope that you can see that it is a heart and these are achievable. I should have possibly done some nicer decorations on the plate, but let's go over to chopping board so you can see how it looks. So we've got our two hearts, we've got our love, and then we're going to put a few of these. We'll just maybe put a little bit more dark chocolate on the plate. And then we'll just put some hearts onto the plate. Scatter the hearts on the plate. And there you have it, chocolate mousse in the shape of a heart for your Valentine. Let's see if we can get that all in. I want to make sure I'm getting it all into the frame of the camera, so let's move it on there. I think that's a little bit better view. Let's move some of the chocolate out of the way. And we'll also move these mousses back into the fridge. Move everything out of view. Trying to get an overhead shot. Okay. Right. Let's go back to the face cam. Yeah, got to make sure you don't eat those little hearts, Sophie. When you get like keen to eat. Right. So once again, I want to thank you both for coming along. There were other people that popped in and out. Really glad you popped in and out, but it'd be good if you stayed a little longer and interacted with the other people here and with myself. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask lots of questions, and even after the lesson is over, you can, when we put this up tomorrow, we'll edit it a little bit. When we put this up tomorrow, if you still have some questions we haven't covered, please leave them in the comment section, and I'll be happy, really happy to answer them all. So thanks again, and wish you all a great evening, and hope that's given you some great inspiration for your Valentine's night. So for now, take care, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for our online cooking lessons. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.